the bone, the fat, you know, and you want to know exactly what you're feeling. And so you have a difference on your non-dominant side, right, comparatively, right? So, and we also, you know, have this tendency to be able to go into the power position better on that side with what Taylor and I were talking about yesterday with the spinal engine and the way that the body counter rotates, like we talked back from the myofascial section, session. Basically, that this idea of coiling and rotating over top of your center of gravity to create that Mike Tyson-like power, and also being able to absorb those forces when you come side to side and in and out of it, so you're shifting your weight and rotating and counterbalancing your limbs, right? We also see a better ability to do this to one side than the other. And also, again, with change of direction and this, again, idea of this counter rotation and stretch and recoil that's going on. So, well, one of the things to talk about here is also, as you're going to try to work on doing your left side or your non-dominant side, these weight shifting patterns and getting in and out of your power position and being able to absorb impact and control that body positioning is not going to be the same as it is on your dominant side that you've been favoring for your whole life, right? So a lot of times when this transition's made to start using your non-dominant side, we use kind of really incomplete and lesser strategies of just, hey, just go practice this movement over and over again. But we tend to favor the right hand dominant side, where we keep our weight shifting on that dominant side, and we don't get that 40 to 60% weight shifting correctly to go from the non-dominant side power position to the follow through. So what ends up happening is you end up staying back, right, instead of following through, which doesn't allow you to rotate and weight shift correctly. So basically, you know, that ends up being an issue where you're going to create all of these excessive torques and all of these things that you don't want, that's going to lead to injury and ultimately a decline in performance. So you have to be very careful with what you're doing, you know, along those lines. Again, coming back to this idea of being in the power position, right, one of the things that it primarily does is creates this kind of perfect elastic stretching and coiling that takes one side of the body and stretches it over in one direction while one side is shortening. So as the concentric phase of the power creation comes out of that power position, that elastic stretch that's going on the other side of the body helps to quickly, boom, pull you back across and finish in this other rotational pattern. And actively, you're also seeing EMG activity on the other side of the body and those other counter opposing muscles that are also causing the body to rotate in the other direction. So we have this weight shifting, right, that goes into the non-dominant side with this side bending, and then we rotate out and go in the other direction. And again, we see differences on the side-to-side mechanics with this.
Hey, I looked it up real quick.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It is genetic. Right hand is called the D gene, and it's dominant, and the left side is C gene, and it's recessive. So that's why you see more right side people.
Yeah, I kind of figured that they had figured that out by now, but I hadn't looked it up. So thank you. Did it give you a percentage on what it is?
It didn't. It's very similar to like green eyes, though. They showed a Punnett square, probability.
Right. Old Punnett square, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't read like down into the details because I'm listening, but they compared it to like having green eyes. It's fairly rare, but I didn't see that.
Right.
I'll look that up later.
Right, yeah, and exactly. You can see that in society. I want to say that I saw it somewhere along the lines of like 10%. Like, Xander, is that Xander?
Sorry, it's Kira. Let me mute.
Oh, Kira. Okay, yeah. Little kid. I may immediately assume it's Xander. They all kind of sound the same. That's no problem. What's up, Kira? All right. So basically, yeah. Again, so that's a great example. Like I said, I think it's somewhere around 10%, right? 90% right-handed, 10% left-handed, if I'm correct on what I looked up before. But I'm sure there's also some type of spectrum there. And again, how do you do those studies? And you can't encapsulate everybody, so they're just estimates, right? So basically, you have this idea of the 1-inch punch, right? And this is another thing that I got kind of obsessed about. Like, how does somebody like Bruce Lee, and there's other people that can do this, create power in that way? And I'm just going to play this video here. right? And you can see as he does this, right, there's this very quick weight shifting and rotation. You could obviously see it a lot more there with the 6-inch punch.
Are you guys seeing it play? I'm not seeing it play.
No?
It's just a picture still.
I think you have to stop sharing the PowerPoint, Lyneil, and then share the YouTube.
Oh, okay. Okay, good call, Noah. You guys see that now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's slide now.
Right, so you even see him, see how he rotates and loads up on his back foot here? You see that? You see how he twists that back foot? He's got all of his weight on his front foot, and then boom, he weight shifts and he rotates. Right? Weight shift, rotation. Right? Which, and if you also look, right, he's head over foot on his right side, right? He starts out in this kind of coiled power position like we were talking about, but it's a lot less coiled than what you would see in Mike Tyson, for example, when he's able to fully wind up and go through these follow-through motions, right? Thanks, Noah. That was, I think it would have taken me 5 minutes to figure that out, so appreciate it. Oops. Look at that. I'm from the internet, Daquan. See that? All right. So
not quite, pal.
Thanks, Noah. Thanks, Noah. So basically, again, you know, and this is probably a big thing to think about. In most athletic competition, competitive scenarios, right, or even really in just recreational things, even like throwing darts, right, we're going to prefer a staggered stance most of the time over a square stance, because it gives us this ability to weight shift from one foot to the other, right, and really kind of coming back to this idea of using the spinal engine for everything that we're doing. But, you know, it's very hard to rotate on 2 feet. So that's one of the reasons why we get our weight transferred over to 1 foot, so we can use one hip to rotate, right? So it's really hard to keep your feet flat or even get on your toes and try to rotate. You really lose a lot of range of motion and stability, and it's really easy to lose your balance there. You know, but for going straight ahead, maybe like a lineman or something like that in football, you know, even those guys, they come out in a staggered stance typically, right, to start. You know, but they may have that more square positioning. I think it's Ben Rothwell. You'll see him do it sometimes in the UFC because he likes, you know, cutting off the ring. So he walks people down, but then as he goes to throw his strikes, you see him change his stance into a staggered stance more. Again, this is this 60-40 weight shifting and rotation, this optimization idea. But the other thing about this, and sorry girls, right, I don't mean to say throw like a girl, but I know that resonates with everybody when you say that. It's a thing that, you know, that people can understand really quickly. At the same time, I know women that I've worked with and girls I went to college with and stuff that guys wish they could throw like they do, right? So it's not necessarily the idea that all women throw like this. Most of what you will see, though, is that your average guy, you know, probably 90% of them are going to be able to throw something further than and faster as well than your best throwing female athlete. It's just that men are more designed for power and explosiveness with throwing in the way that our limbs are. We don't have the carrying angle in the elbow, and the different positions in the hips and everything allows us to use this spinal engine. Again, you know, Taylor and I were talking about this. I'm probably going to keep honing in on that, because it's this idea of, you know, this power position and getting out of it with this coiling and recoiling type of motion. But when you think about the opposite of the 1-inch punch, right, and the opposite, well, obviously being dead, right, would be the opposite, or, you know, being knocked out and not being able to move at all. But when we're moving and trying to, you know, execute on some type of movement pattern, limping is probably the best example that we can see of, you know, an issue with being the opposite in this weight shifting and rotation 60 to 40% pattern that we see as this optimization in movement and power. Limping is the opposite, right? Where we see this poor movement economy and ultimately this favoring of one side of the body and not being able to weight shift appropriately. So I'm going to stop share right now. Keep recording.
You got it.
Right. Can you guys see that now?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and one of the things I want to note is this head movement, right? You see this head movement bobbing all around, right? Getting away from being over top of the base of support, right? And shifting the body away. And this is a real, I like this one because it's really exaggerated, right? And you can see the other part is, if you see here on the left side, how he's turning the foot out to the side, right? And reaching it away from the center of gravity, right? And away from the base of support, because when you're injured like that, it's like wider is better. You guys remember the Dodge Intrepid commercials where they were showing that the tires in the car were wider? I remember that from like 10, 15 years ago. Wider is better. They kept saying that because you have more stability technically when you fan your feet out and you widen your base of support. You can stay in a better balanced position, but it's not necessarily better for your movement economy. So as you start to move, basically, I don't know if we talked about this yet in these series here, but when you walk, as you increase your cadence, you basically go from a wider base of support to basically tandem when you're running. And even when you're running, you will actually see some crossover on the feet, right? Where basically as one foot strike's coming down in front of the other, some people actually get so far that they're crossing one foot over the other, which is, you know, the further you get into that, it becomes inefficient as well. But again, coming back from this idea, if I'm going to move from standing to walking, right, my base of support and my toeing out and my limb swing basically comes more into a tandem foot strike pattern as I go. So when we limp, we actually see the opposite of this. Right? And the one thing that's interesting about this is because we kind of have two different types of limping patterns. We have one where we see this lurching pattern where the foot's still toed out in this position, right? But we're flexing the limb, right? And we're basically bobbing the head forward to try to take weight off the limb. So on the other side, the other way, which I'll show another picture of this, the side bending there, right? As we see how the head goes over top of the right foot. Well, when the left foot comes down and strikes the ground, typically we see that the head is shifted way over to the right side of the body, which is more of like what we would call a Trendelenburg gait pattern. Right, and you also see this, you see how the right arm swing is doing most of the work there? Can you see that? You see how that right arm swing is actually going behind the body and swinging, where the left arm swing's really just kind of dragging through, just like that limb is, right? Which is the exact opposite of what we want to do. But this is a big example of a movement pattern that is the opposite. What happened here? Is the opposite of that power position movement and the 1-inch punch.